probably the first question we want to answer is, what the heck is Vintage Story? The website calls it an uncompromising wilderness survival sandbox game inspired by eldritch horror themes. I'd say that hits most of the highlights, but I don't know if I'd call it uncompromising. The eldritch horror is mostly in the background unless you're getting a temporal storm. Then yeah, it's pretty in your face. And I would say that it's a voxel world, because like Survival Sandbox doesn't really explicitly say that. I would say it's decently realistic. Some of the mechanics are pretty in-depth, but some of the other ones are a lot less in-depth. It has a pretty basic health bar and hunger meter. You're probably watching the footage I have in the background going, wait a second, that's a Minecraft. Well, you're almost right. It used to be a Minecraft mod, so I give you partial credit. Quite a few of the systems in the game are just from Minecraft, and then some of the systems are easier than Minecraft. Like in Minecraft you can't sprint if the hunger bar is empty, but in Vintage Story you can, and there's not really any penalty for the hunger bar being empty except that you start dying. And also Minecraft spawns enemies if you don't sleep, but you don't need to sleep in Vintage Story. It's a little inconsistent, but of course it is still in development. Would I recommend the game? Yes, but not to everybody. First, I'm going to talk about some things that might be drawbacks for some people, then I'm going to talk about what I like about the game, then I'm going to talk about some complaints I have that'll directly tie into the mod discussion. Since there's quite a few mods that fix said problems or, expand features, one of the biggest things that's probably going to turn some people away, especially impatient people, is going to be the slow progress. For example, getting a stone pickaxe in Minecraft, you can do that in a matter of minutes as long as you don't spawn really far away from a tree. Getting a copper pickaxe in Vintage Story, which is the first thing you can use to destroy rocks. You cannot destroy rocks if you don't have a copper pickaxe or better. A copper pickaxe will take somebody who's new an in-game week or at least several days. Even if you know what you're doing, I think the soonest you can get it is like maybe a couple days, maybe down to 1 day if you're like really, really fast. The flip side of the slow progression is that it makes each milestone kind of feel, more worthwhile. But a lot of people are going to hear like, oh, I made a copper pickaxe, and think, that can't be very hard, right? Well, it's not that easy. There will often be times where you're doing tedious, repetitive tasks like, oh, I need to go get a bunch of grass because I need that to start some pottery. Or, oh, I need to go chop down several trees because I need more firewood. Or, oh, I gotta go out and pick more berries or do more hunting. The game has several steps in the progression where a lot of times one seemingly small thing will have you hung up. And you'll oftentimes need to venture several thousand blocks away from wherever you set up your house or from spawn to find something, and you're going to have to do that with quite a few different things. If you don't spawn near a source of lime to make leather, gonna have to go look for that. You may have to go look for copper. Sometimes you might even need to go far away to find clay, which is a big deal. You're almost never gonna spawn on top of everything you need. I don't know if that's even possible. So if you don't like the idea of needing to go on multiple in-game day exploration ventures, it's probably not going to be the game for you. Another thing some people might find annoying is the progression isn't always going to feel super linear. For example, once you've made like your first couple copper tools, that doesn't mean you're never going to use stone tools again, because you're going to use copper for your most important tools while you're still working with some stone things, and then as you get more copper, you're going to slowly phase out stone tools, and you'll do the same thing again with bronze. The hunger rate can feel quite high at times, especially if you're not eating meals, which provide a pause to the satiety meter. I think Minecraft has a similar feature to that. So it's going to feel like you have to eat a lot, and I would argue it's not very realistic in that regard because you need to eat way more often than you would in real life. I do understand the character's a lot more active than most people are, so that kind of makes up some of it, but not all of it. The game pretty heavily relies on you reading the in-game survival guide, and it's not always the most straightforward. It can be a little confusing sometimes, and some sections aren't always perfectly congruent with other sections, and sometimes there's things that probably should be a guide, but they're only really explained like on the specific item. And then you might think, oh, well, I can remember to do that by going to the wiki, but the problem is most people aren't allowed to edit the wiki, and the wiki articles range pretty wildly in quality. Usually they're pretty good, but there are a couple that are just really terrible, and I don't know how they got approved. For things I like, probably the first thing you're going to notice is I think the game actually looks really good despite being low fidelity. A big part of that is the lighting, which helps accent the visuals and enhance the immersion. It's not perfectly realistic or anything like that, but it's definitely believable. I want to give a huge shout out to IlioCast for not only taking me on a tour of TPOS, which is the official public server, but also for giving me some food and building the incredible tunnels between the translocators. Probably my favorite feature is the ability to store things in the game world without needing to open any sort of menu. In almost every game you need to open the chest and it pops up a little menu. In Vintage Story you can put stuff on the ground without dropping it in, it'll always be there when you come back. Or you can access crates, for example, without going into any menu or anything, and that helps the game feel a lot more real. Another feature that I really like is if you're crafting with the crafting menu, you can press the hotkeys on your hotbar and that will swap that item up to the crafting grid, which is just so good. And if there's any games in the future that have a similar sort of thing but don't have that feature, you bet I'm going to be complaining about it. Something that a lot of similar games to this struggle with is having meaningful progression. A lot of times it's like, oh, you have the new tier so you can mine the new block, and then they'll let you mine the next tier. It's not as good as Terraria, where Terraria has like all kinds of stuff. Lets you move around the game world better, differently, lets you, place stuff faster, place stuff further away, dig further away. It's not quite that good, but there's a lot of good stuff. There's mounts, there's sailboats, which can carry you and your stuff across the ocean. There's new and better food storage. There's ways you can automate certain things with machines. Oh geez, mining is getting tedious. Don't worry, there's bombs for that. And yes, there is one that will mine ore for you without destroying it. There's also chiseling, which lets you make sub-block adjustments to things in the world. You can use it to make a custom table, make arches. You can use it to make a painting, because you can both remove and place things. There's a ton of stuff you can do with chiseling. And believe it or not, the game called Vintage Story actually has story missions. Chapter 1 was solid, and somehow they raised the bar quite a bit even with Chapter 2, so I'm definitely anticipating the next 6 chapters. Even if you don't care about the lore or anything, the rewards from the first 2 are solid and definitely worth doing. Things that I wish could be better or improved a little bit. Number 1, the way you interact with stuff is you can usually left click to destroy. Right click will let you pick stuff up or do whatever the block's primary interact is. Then there's a secondary interact you can use by holding down shift to sneak and then right click. Now the reason it's like that is because that's how they had to do it for Minecraft. You can change the hotkey, but no matter what you do, you still have to press some button plus right click. Because of this, right click can have up to 4 interactions on one block if you add in control, which lets you remove or add multiple of something at a time. So if I want to say walk up to a crate and interact with it, I can have right click, control right click, whatever my modifier button is, plus right click, and then whatever my modifier button is, plus control, or however I've bound to that one, plus right click. Yes, there is an interaction overlay you can turn on, but that really takes me out of the game, and I usually play with that turned off. The satiety meter is just really simple, and it's almost a copy and paste from Minecraft. Now don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of stuff around the satiety meter that definitely is a lot more complicated, like food spoils, so you have to worry about like food storage, or if you want to take nutrition away from your food to make it last longer. There's also the nutrition system, but it's not directly related to the satiety meter. You can have full nutrition in every section and be starving to death, which is confusing. It's also weird that they chose hunger. They didn't pick hunger just because it's from Minecraft, but there's no sleep or thirst, which you need to do more often than you eat. There are mods both for sleep and thirst, but the sleep mod has not been updated yet, and the game's not really balanced around you having to carry drinking vessels. For example, you can't just like take a jug and stick it on the fire to like turn it into boiled water. Also, you can't just fill up an entire cooking pot with water to boil it. You can only do like one section at a time. It's just kind of awkward. Tying into the sleep thing, I think this would probably be too tedious for some people, but the way armor works is it increases your hunger rate and slows you down, which is true, but really the big disadvantage in real life is that you would get tired quicker. So there could be both like a fatigue meter or something you need to sleep, but there can also be an energy meter. But every time anybody suggests anything about energy in the suggestion channel, everybody dogpiles them. Armor does slow you down a bit. I saw a test where they gave a marathon runner different levels of armor and then had him do a mile. He was slower, but the biggest things were he had trouble breathing, it was hotter, and also the helmet was really loud. There's no penalty for getting too hot in Vintage Stories, just in general. The aspect that armor would also make you hotter is another thing that's not getting modeled at all. Speaking of armor, melee combat is mostly just hold down left click until they're dead. Obviously you do need to aim with your ranged weapon. Now, that said, them changing combat is not only on the roadmap, it's planned for the next update. Another problem I have is how quickly clothing wears out. I made a new set of clothing and went on a 2 or 3 day mining expedition, came back and my clothing had 0% condition. I looked at the code to see how it worked and didn't really explain it. Code just uses a constant number for the clothing wear rate, and it's not adjusted by how long your months are or anything like that, which is really bizarre. Speaking of clothing, there's also no wool, even though there's like sheep, long-haired goats, and yaks, all of which could be sheared for, hair. I don't really understand the game having sheep or goats if you can't shear them. And you might think, oh, well, the game doesn't have shears. No, that's the thing. The game has sheep, goats, and shears, but you can't do it. Especially since a lot of clothing back then, or well, once you get far enough into the game, it definitely has a medieval aesthetic going on. A lot of clothing and even armor back then would be made with wool. Gambesons could be made with linen or wool, and you can make gambesons, but there's no wool. There is a thing on the roadmap about having more animal produce, so maybe that's on there. Now, there is a mod for wool, but I'd prefer not to have a bajillion mods installed just to play the game. Now, this one's probably just me, but I feel like the game gives you just way too much information for free. Like, if I see an enemy and I have the block overlay thing on, which I'm pretty sure they expect you to have on, it tells me like how strong the enemy is, even if I can't see it. Like, even if it's pitch black, I can just point the cursor at him and it'll tell me. Why do you need to know that? How am I going to know if I need to run away from an enemy? Well, maybe when they hit you and you lose 2/3 of your health, yeah, maybe then you should start running away. You can look at the soil and tell the exact amount of each nutrient. If it was just like, oh, it's low or high, so you don't have to remember exactly what you planted everywhere, that's fine. I'd prefer it if the stuff in the forge was a temperature range instead of the exact temperature, though I understand that one's a little more picky because sometimes you want to be at a certain temperature to work but not able to quench. I understand that one a little bit more. Shit, even Terraria has like a clock and a depth meter and stuff like that. Adventure Story's like, nah, here's it all for free, which seems out of step with the rest of the game. I know enemies that can break blocks aren't very popular, but maybe there could be one that like only spawns underground, because there is one that currently does that. So it'd be nice if it could like break into your mine shaft, or if you just put up a Pactor wall, I can break that down. One thing I'd like to see is maybe a little bit more enemy variety, or at least as the enemies are stronger, maybe they have like new abilities or new pathfinding or new attacks. Because right now, as far as I understand it, they just like get extra health and extra damage in a new appearance, which is all right, but I'd like to see just a little bit more on the higher tier enemies, something to kind of distinguish them a little bit. Speaking of enemies, I want to say I really like Shivers. So many enemies have super predictable behavior, like they just walk towards you or they just stand still and shoot at you, but Shivers have all kinds of crazy moves, and I'm not going to spoil them in this video, but I just want to say I appreciate them. They're also fucking terrifying. Currently, there aren't any rivers, and also the way water is generated is kind of weird. There are some mods that help with that, and that one is on the roadmap as well. Another feature from Minecraft that's weirdly absent in Vintage Story is maps. Normally, you can just either have access to the world map or you can have it disabled. There's not any sort of in-between. It'd be cool if you could draw up your own maps, or maybe even you had to draw the world map, though I understand some people would probably not like that, so maybe make an option. Currently, after mining ores, you need to use a hammer to smash it into nuggets, and it would be really nice if there was some kind of machine that could do that for you. There is a machine right now called the pulverizer, which turns stuff into powder, but I'm thinking something a little less extreme that just crushes it or grinds it, however you want to call that. It's tedious to make a lot of shingles or bricks for building, and it would be nice if there was some kind of like stamping machine where you could like stick a brick mold in and then you feed it clay and it spits out unfired bricks. If you're looking at the footage in the background, these are not the default world generation settings, so here are the ones I use. I do have a few mods, but I don't think any of them are going to like dramatically affect what you see going on in the background. So there's my review for Vintage Story. Overall positive, definitely could improve a few things, but I'm looking forward to more updates in the future. Thanks for watching.